Welcome to RGBA, colorful tech news and reviews. This is episode 73. My name is Alexandre Valia-Lagacé, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tara Ménard. All right, remember a couple of weeks ago we discussed the brand new Tesla cars and semi-truck. This was quite fun to see Tesla bring out new products and one more thing. But there's some guy who actually went a little bit further. I think that started with a gag on a forum about mining Bitcoins using the autopilot supercomputer in your Tesla. And am I seeing that properly? Like a guy actually did it?
Yeah, and it's pretty not time consuming. I mean, time sensitive right now because Tesla's in the news and Bitcoin is all over the news. So it might be like an old article that just resurfaced, but it's really, really cool. I'm not sure like how new it is. So
yeah, because technically the autopilot computer in the Tesla can be considered like a supercomputer because it has very powerful processing units, because it has to process 100 times a second data coming from, I don't know, like there's like 12 or 13 sensors, I think, like radar, LiDAR, proximity sensors, and also cameras and everything. And all that has to be processed in real time in order for the car to react appropriately depending on what's around it. So people were suggesting that this computer might be usable for a mining rig, basically. To be able to mine Bitcoins, you need supercomputers to calculate the hashing of each transaction to validate the transactions. And I'm guessing that this computer has a bunch of GPUs, which are usually what people are looking for when they try to make a big mining rig, is a GPU power, which is as powerful, if not more, for this application than regular CPUs. So I don't know, maybe that really is the thing. I'm not sure exactly how that thing would work because, okay, it's CPUs, it's mining, fine, but like, is it fast? There's no numbers in terms of speed or number of hashes per second it can process, because the whole thing could be done for nothing if this thing is slower than your computer, So I'm not sure if that has been detailed somewhere. The only thing we see is that the whole thing is drawing 2.8 kilowatt of power. So basically what he's suggesting is you go to a Tesla Supercharger, you plug the car in, and then you let the rig run forever. And that's like free Bitcoins for no power cost for you, because the price of the charging is already included in your vehicle price. So yeah, that's quite something.
Is that still works there, the free supercharger thing? It's like a grandfather clause when you bought the car a couple of years ago.
Yes, it's per car, but if you buy a car right now, the cheapest model, the 70D, is it the D or the 70 regular, does not include supercharging. You have to pay an extra option on top of that. So now it's not all cars. For the first couple of years, trying to push their system and their infrastructures, basically Tesla included the price in the car, but not anymore for the base models. If you get like a 90D or a 100D, yes, you'll get it for free, but not for the cheapest option.
And do we have a lot of superchargers in Canada or Quebec, Montreal?
We have one in Montreal, which is the service center. We have one in Quebec also. And they just enabled one in Trois-Rivières. And I think there's also one in Brossard at the Distrant, at the hotel. What is it? That hotel there, the Distrant.
Alt.
Yeah, the Alt Hotel, yeah. And this is, it's already was quite popular for electric plugs. Those hotel chains, the Alt, I think, are linked to, is it the Germain-des-Prés or whatever, some other big brand of hotel in Quebec. And they've always been very, very fond of Tesla. I've went to a couple of those hotels or passed by, and I saw Tesla, like the wall unit that you plug at home. Basically, these guys, they put like a wooden post and they drilled on each of those posts like a wall unit for Tesla. So you don't have a supercharger per se at those hotels, but you still have the Tesla plug for your car, which would charge on the, I guess, 220 volts, probably 30 or 60 amp charger. So that's they were pretty avant-gardist for that. So yeah, in Brossard, I think they have one now. That's is officially a supercharger.
It's not at the Hot Hotel, but it's right next to it. And the Alt Hotel is like it's on the map as a charging place, but it's not a supercharger. The supercharger is right next to it, so I don't know how that works.
Okay, yeah, I think it because the where it's located, it's on the side of the hotel, I think, and that place was basically just a parking lot, but it was rarely used because there's also a underground parking lot just across the street. So basically, people who wanted to park close to that, they have plenty of space, and maybe they decided that this space was better used for certain charging stations. So
Okay, there's also one in Place Vertu in Ville-Saint-Laurent,
okay,
and there's supposed to be one coming in Pointe Claire at the Fairview Shopping Center.
nice. So when do you get your Roadster?
Once they come out.
Ooh, that can be long.
Yeah, I got my order and everything.
Okay, cool. The Founders Edition, I hope.
Yeah, everything.
Cool, $250,000 pennies. All right, so this week we had a big macOS problem. You probably heard it already on other podcasts, but we're still gonna summarize it quickly. Basically, if you were going onto your macOS admin panel and hitting that little lock button, you could enter the username root and leave the password field blank and click unlock. That would allow you to be logged in as root, which is a super user on any Unix computer, which allows you to do anything you want. So that allowed anybody, for example, to go on a computer that's not his, click on that guest login that is sometime enabled, and then you go into that panel, you unlock it with root, and now you can create a new user, or you can just change the password of the other guys, or do whatever you want. So you had full access. So I'm not sure exactly what happened, but basically they released a patch for it the very next day, and I think that patch broke something else, and they patched it again. So that same security update 2017-001 came up a second time in your Apple macOS App Store update. So I think twice. That's only, well, the fix was released twice, so now you should be good, right?
Yeah, the first one was for the root problem, and the second was for because the first patch broke file sharing, I think.
Yeah.
So the second patch was to fix file sharing that was broken by the root patch.
Yes, but also the first patch, they said that you do not need to reboot your computer, but I think it was the case for many person. So the second one basically properly applied it without any need of rebooting. So, but yeah. And also that this is the second time that Apple releases this type of patch, which is a mandatory self-installing patch. So if you had your computer open during yesterday, I think it was yesterday. No, so it was 2 days ago. Basically, the patch would install itself whenever the computer was idle for a certain amount of time. So this is only the second time. The other time that they used that was for an NTP bug, which is a internet time synchronization service that caused big problems. So kudos to Apple to clear that quickly. People are complaining about the QA process because having a patch release like this quick is always dangerous, and it's usually when QA does not have enough time to do all their tests. And yeah, so basically, it was released, it was fixed, life's good. Did you know the root cause of the problem? Have you been able to discover that?
No. Do you?
I read somewhere that somebody actually went very far for that. They actually disassembled the code running in the background, and they were able to guess that the API function that was used to validate the login usually returns 0 as in success and anything else as an error code. That is basic Unix return codes, how they work. And the developer who basically coded whatever goes on top of that function probably did not use the return code properly. Maybe he understood that 0 is false and 1 is true. Therefore, if you have 1, then you're allowed to log in. And perhaps that if the root username is not enabled, like it is by default, it's not enabled on any Macs, maybe the return code was 1 and the developer said, okay, if it's 1, then proceed to log in. So I think that's the root cause of the problem. It's pretty interesting if you want to learn how the sausage is made. And then we had another bug, but this time for iOS. So 2 in the same week. What happened this time?
The first one or the second one? Oh no, it's the first one. Sorry. So, a lot of people were having problems on December 2nd. So as we recorded, it was yesterday. The phone would go into like a crash loop in the morning. I think it was something to do with like a repeating notification. I don't know from which app or who triggered it or something. So repeating notification that would just go on forever. It would just cause the phone to freeze and the phone to stop. So on its own without you doing anything. So just because of something with the date. So that was really bad also. There's just no friends or nobody in my like
vicinity.
Yeah, that complained of it to me. So I don't know if you've heard anything or if you have a device that had the problem.
Nope, not a single peep.
So I'm not sure like how. And then because I'm really late on Twitter and people are suggesting to update to the beta so the bug won't happen. So it's like people in Australia were triggering like all this news. And now the US was trying to adjust, like, oh no, we don't want this to happen to our phone. So it was a little weird. Felt like a delayed crisis or something like that.
Yeah, what ended up happening is, yes, you could probably install the beta, but also Apple released in a rush 11.2. So the final version of 11.2, which was only scheduled to be released in a couple of weeks, was actually released yesterday. So I applied this update quickly, just because I didn't want to be caught in that reboot loop. And I haven't seen any problem. The big tentpole feature for 11.2 was supposed to be the Apple Pay Cash card thing. And according to Apple support on Twitter, so we now have a official Apple support account, they say that the feature is not included yet. It will be rolling out early next week. So kudos for Apple for releasing a fix quickly. Hopefully it was already QA'd properly, and this is only one feature that has to be enabled on the server side. So perhaps in their release plan, they were planning to release the server feature first and then give the final version to a couple of employees, see how it works, and then company at large, and finally the public. So maybe they just changed their plans and already re-released this feature yesterday. Ask a couple hundred employees to install it ASAP and see what happens. And if nothing came up of that, they would release it, and that's probably what they did.
Yeah, so it's really not been a good week for update people.
No, one of the worst. I don't know. Like, people complain about those problems, like for the macOS root problem, and like they say that they should fire somebody because of that. But it's such, if it's what we have discovered, which is just a misunderstanding of a return value of a function, this is just an error, a human error. Like, we as developer, we often do those kind of errors because depending on which part of the system you're coding on and which part of the system you're interacting with, the programming standards are not the same. So functions could return true, false. They can return 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 0 is usually the equivalent of false. But sometimes if you go, like in this case, into Unix subsystems, then 0 is success and anything else is a failure. So you always have to understand where you're coming from, where you're going with those return values, and exactly understand what you need to pass the function. And sometimes the name or the implied feature or function is not necessarily what you're thinking it really is. So it's not always easy to understand. Sometimes these things are fixed and they are caught in unit test or some kind of testing. But in this case, I don't know why. It just was able to circumvent all those tests and pass right through. It's like the calculator bug we had a couple weeks ago, where if you would do 1 plus 2 plus 3, it would equal 23 because the animation on the newly recoded Swift app was not uh, finished. Therefore, your second plus sign was not taken into consideration. So you would do 1 plus 2, 3. So that would be 1 plus 23. So uh, that is sad because it's a very easy bug to do. Like if you recode any app, one of the usual QA tests that you do is you just try to use it super fast, and that's one way of finding the problems. But in this case, maybe the developer who did it did not have the latest release of the OS with all the nice animation added, or maybe he had those reduced animation accessibility feature on. So there's a bunch of scenarios there, but I don't think there's someone specific to blame, and I don't think we should fire anyone from that. If we start to see this happen at every release, then there should be some manager that should better manage his team or his expectations. But I don't think there's one single developer that should be fired over this. Moving on to very first official medical accessory for the Apple Watch. The AliveCor company basically makes EKG type of devices that you strap around your chest, and you can link to your iPhone. So it's a Bluetooth, kind of like when you're doing some cardio training and you have those heart monitor straps. Same kind of thing, but a bit more powerful. And this was already on the market. Many people use it. The main reason is because it's supposed to work super well. I know Don Melton from Vector Podcast and other internet fame and Apple fame. He also has one, and he only had good things to say about it. And AliveCor was already in the open saying that they were applying for the very first FDA approved system, but to work with your Apple Watch. So what does this mean? Is you do not need a chest strap anymore. Everything is inside the bracelet. So it would be a special band that you install on your Apple Watch that works in conjunction with your watch to basically do the exact same feature. So tracking your heart rate, and if you have any heart condition, you can monitor that using that bracelet. So this is the first one, and it's been approved. So that's great for AliveCor, of course, but it's great for anybody else because that means that the door is now open to have more devices that are Apple Watch centric and that can leverage the Apple Watch sensors and its very own sensor and work in pair for a certain objective. So that's great.
So it costs $200, but you have to have a $100 subscription to AliveCor Premium.
Yeah,
whatever that is.
true.
So I'm guessing it talks back to the watch or the phone.
I'm guessing it's probably both. I'm guessing that some of the data is maybe compiled using the Apple Watch sensor also, because remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago we discussed about Cardiogram, the iPhone app and Apple Watch app to share your heart rate.
Yes.
I totally missed that, but this spring there was a study with the UCSF and Cardiogram team that basically concluded that the Apple Watch could detect an abnormal heart condition with 97% accuracy when paired with an AI algorithm. So the sensor themselves, the raw sensor data, is accurate enough that with some kind of AI, you can be certain up to 97% of the time that you are diagnosing properly in a heart condition. So that's huge because this means that the sensors are great. And AliveCor, being a company that makes hardware, probably their sensor detects something that the Apple Watch cannot. So in pair, they can probably cross-reference the heartbeat and the sensor data from the AliveCor sensor, and that probably makes a total global picture much better of your heart shape, not shape, but your heart condition. So that's great.
So who knew, like a couple of years ago when the Apple Watch came out, that it would be like a medical device now?
Yeah, all eyes were turned around battery life. That was a big feature that people were afraid of, starting with the first Apple Watch. And I don't know if you remember, there was a Kickstarter to make a battery bracelet that
Yeah.
would connect to the diagnostic port on the inside of the wrist. What's it called, this thing? Where you slide in your watch band.
Like the straps?
Yeah, but inside where that little cylinder slides in.
Like the technical term?
Well, yeah,
Lugs?
the lugs. Where the lugs go in, there's a little door there with a little push button. So that door can be removed, and it's a diagnostic port. So I'm guessing that's what they use if you have to restore your Apple Watch at the store when you crashed it for real. And that little port there can also receive power. So that was where they were hoping to be able to plug in the bracelet and give the watch an extra day of power. But Apple quickly disabled that feature in software, and they were left with a funded Kickstarter with an impossible product to release. But this time it's different. They went to the FDA, and they don't rely on any physical feature from the Apple Watch. Everything they need is under sensor, and if they have access to your heartbeat from the Apple Watch, then they just have more data and a better precision in their analysis.
Okay, so also this week there was another heart related or health related news by Apple. They talked about during the iPhone keynote about joining this or creating or like starting this big heart study program. So it was officially released this week. You can, if you're in the US and over 22 and have a watch that it's, what's the requirement? Series 1 or later and running WatchOS 4, you can join the program. So it's just a big study, official by Apple. What's the difference between this and Cardiogram? I think this one is like the official one.
Yeah, Cardiogram I think was probably kickstarted by either other hospitals or other universities, and probably with no involvement from Apple. I'm not sure exactly about the details of the program, but I think the end goal is not the same necessarily. The Apple Heart Study with Stanford is really to diagnose, well, to identify quickly if you are suffering from arterial defibrillation, so AFib. Uh, that's the specific thing they're targeting for this study. The other one basically just trying to understand if the sensors can be used and how reliably are they for any heart-related condition. So it's greater, it's wider in terms of reach, and it's probably also leveraging AI more than this. This is just a study to see what do we have on our wrist, and is that thing sufficient to diagnose a specific problem that is one of the worst kind, because whenever you start feeling the effects of it, it can be life or death. So you can easily die from this condition, and that's without ever having any problems before. So you only discover it once you have a problem, and when you have a problem, you have a high risk of dying. So if you can diagnose this beforehand, if your watch can tell you that you have a heart condition that you should go check out just to be sure, then it might save your life. So that's one small study with a big impact.
And also, I join all these studies. It probably won't come to the Canada, but to Canada because of all the like restrictions and medical like certificates you have to pass or medical tests or whatever. I don't know how all the FDA things work, but like I join all of these, and I suggest everyone to join this because it's easy and it's free and it helps a lot of people.
Yep. And one reason also which why you won't ever see it here is, remember, let's say 5 years ago, okay? If you had those kind of studies to be conducted, what do? You basically hire students to go over documents with people. You met with people again and again. You plug their heart in some kind of devices, or they go around and carry it for a day or two. Then the memory is full. You have to offload it. Think of the whole background work needed to make that kind of study. It requires immense amount of hours, immense amount of people to help you. And in the end, what do you have? Like 400 people, 500 at most. In this case, let's say, like, let's throw a number here. Let's say that we have 50 million Apple Watch in the US, and maybe only 1% of them participates in that study. Already, that's 500,000 people. So without anything required from a lab assistant or students or whatever, you already have 500,000 people shooting data your way. So right off the bat, you have 100 times more data, 1,000 times more data than you were ever dreaming to get, with 1,000 times less the work. So this is amazing, because now with only a small country, let's say just the US, you have enough data to cover your whole study and to have enough data to get so much precision into your end results, because you have such a large portion of people participating, and you don't have to, and that can scale. So you don't have to, the more people you onboard, the more work you have to put. No, the work is the same, but the number of people can be scaled to infinite without any more work from your side. So that's why I don't think we're going to see it here. They have enough data in the US. If they required stuff for other countries, they could. But in this very first study, it's only for a specific condition. And they already have like the number of people that this affects in the US, and they already have enough data to go ahead with their program.
I just checked your math on that. 5 million people,
Yeah.
1% is 50,000 people, not 500,000.
Okay. Come
But
on.
we get your point. We get your point.
I suck at math. Oh, jeez. Yeah.
But still, it's a lot of people. And
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Easy. Well, easier than signing people up and like through their phone and going through documents and issuing a chest strap to everybody and please wear this and send us back the data after a couple weeks or something.
The chest strap that you usually wear when you have a heart condition, that thing only has 48 hours of recording time. So you have to wear it. Usually they give it to you for like a week or two, and they tell you like whenever you think you would be the most likely to have a problem, put it on and start it. But like you don't know in advance exactly when you're gonna have like an incident or something. So it's totally useless. Like you wear this for like a couple days, and then you only have the problem like the next week. So you record nothing, and your cardiologist has nothing to work on. So it's basically like meh until it happens again. Good luck. So not the best kind of thing. So for a space nerd like you, we had some news that came out 2 days ago, about Voyager 1 firing up its thrusters after 37 years. What's up with that?
It uses their right now to like make micro adjustments in its course and all that. It uses like a thrusters, but I'm not sure they're not like the big thrusters that were used at the beginning. They're like these small thrusters just to make adjustments. But they were noticing that they weren't giving enough power for the adjustments that were needed. So they didn't build a team. Yeah, they built a team. No, they put together a team to try to fix the problem, and they came up with, let's just use the big old thrusters to make these adjustments. And so they I guess they shipped the program to the satellite, and it took like, let me see, I think it's like 3 days.
I think it's 19 hours to get data back. So I don't know how much time it takes to send data.
I guess pretty much the same. It's the same amount of time to ship it over there. Yeah, so it takes like a bunch of hours to ship the program to the satellite, and then get the response back that it worked. And apparently it worked. So the thrusters that haven't been working for 37 years, just fire them right up and they're good to go. Try to do that with a car now.
Yeah, that's amazing. 37 years later. And yeah, like you said, they use the big thrusters, but only for milliseconds at a time, so that they could make micro adjustments. The reason for that is that the way that the spaceship was going, basically not spaceship, but the satellite was going, is that the antenna was aiming away from Earth, and they wanted to get some data back, so they needed to turn it around and aim at Earth. It's a dish to be able to send the data. So to do that, they really had to micro start basically the big thruster and get it to turn to get the proper angle. And that's crazy because they used 10 milliseconds pulses, and they basically just like coded the actions basically, and then they sent that over. It took 19 hours and 35 minutes to reach the antenna, and then they waited, and then boop, data started to come in, so it worked. So that was amazing. So this vessel right now is at 141 astronomical units distance from us, and its sister ship, which is a bit more recent, I think it's 114 or 113 AUs, so it's not as far, but it's getting there eventually. So this is pretty interesting.
Do you know where it is, like in our solar system?
Voyager 1 is out of our solar system. So by all accounts of what you determine as the edge of our solar system, is it the asteroids that are circling the sun, or is the heliosphere, which is the how far the sun rays are going. For both of those reasons, it passed those limits. So it really is outside of our solar system. The very first human-made object is now outside our system.
And it was launched on September 5th, 1977.
Yep, it's crazy. And it still works. I think a couple of years ago they were saying that the plutonium-based system it had was basically should be done for basically no more energy. But what they realized that they could let it go for a couple more decades if they turned off most of the systems. So they basically put it like into low battery mode and they let it run for a couple more years. And I think we still have about 10 years to go before it's fully drained. So I don't know what's the impact of those micro adjustments they did with the thrusters, but yeah, it's impressive to see this thing still go like that. And think about like when we people are saying that we have like our device are now have like a specific life expectancy, and these devices they had specs they had to respect, and they were always putting in more efforts to be able to provide even more than what they were asked for. And this is exactly the proof. 37 years without working, those thrusters they still work, and this plutonium based system still fires this little computer inside there, and it still goes for another decade probably. So it's impressive.
Imagine like finding people that actually can code and whatever this is programmed in. It must be hard.
Yeah, I don't think we don't have much of those anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's the original programmers, they probably handed down coding guides and stuff, and yeah, that's pretty
And what
special.
happens if you write a bug? Like imagine the testing process of this, like to make sure it's bulletproof, and because you can't test on hardware and get an answer and then just make tweaks. It's you better ship the right software.
I don't think you can make tests. I think you only have one shot at this, so you better code review your program properly.
You can make tests here, like I guess they have models or and all that, but you can't test in production.
Yeah, exactly, and you only have one try at this. So if ever they fired those thrusters and the thing turned on its side, then you have to wait, analyze what's the new status of the craft, and send new commands to counter the effect of your overzealous thrusters. So that's another set of testing, and yeah, it's crazy. Just think about it. And that 19 hours delay. So whenever we put stuff in production, it usually is instantaneous or happens in the minute in terms of minutes, and those minutes are super long. Imagine having to wait like almost a full day just to
I
see
know
if
you have to sleep and all that.
yeah, well, try to sleep. I don't think you get much sleep when you send those commands over to the spaceship that's 37 years old. So talking about power chips, not in the Voyager spacecraft anymore, but in the Apple iOS devices. There are rumors that Apple will start to build their very own power management chips in-house. So instead of relying with a third party called Dialog for the chip that manages the power, so charging, discharging, using the power, probably also um, the the power numbers going back to the OS, like the voltage and the amperage and everything. Basically, that chip, which is what allows you to charge your iPhones or your iPads with slow charging things or higher wattage, so you can charge them faster, should maybe will be built in house by Apple. So they will be able to build. Maybe that chip will be integrated into the A series CPU. We don't know, but basically, some kind of rumors comes from the manufacturing plants, and that's what we learned. And sadly, the company Dialog Semiconductors shares dropped 19% in one afternoon because of this announcement. So it's one step further again for Apple to do everything in house, to be able to better optimize every component, to be tailored to exactly their need, and not a chip that is off the shelf that can work on any devices. So that makes a big difference for them. It gives them an advantage in terms of energy consumption, so they can better manage the battery. So yeah, it's with the new cores that they have, the slow cores and the high performance core, that allows them to do a lot. But maybe they found some constraint in the management of the power, and since that's those CPUs with those different types of cores is not something that other company have. They have specific requirements that were not fulfilled by the battery chip. So kudos for them if they make something even better. So I'm looking forward to see the impact of this in-house thing.
So in the app corner, we haven't used this for a while. We haven't seen this corner in a while. I mean, there's a documentary that came out this week. Yeah, this week. It's been on Kickstarter, I think, since 2014 or something. It's been hyped a lot around WWDC each year because they have a screening or they try to get more interviews and all that. The documentary is by two guys. Forget their name. Do you have them?
Almost.
Okay, so anyways.
It's Jake Schumacher, which is the director, editor, and cinematographer. And the co-director is Jedediah Hurt. And there's a bunch of people that are also participating, like Adam Lissagor, Dave Morin, Donnie Darcy Schumacher, and Greg. Oh, geez, I'm gonna scrap his name. Steichleiter. Let's go. Yeah. So, and a bunch of people. They're consulting people. There's cast. So it's not a small documentary with one guy and one interview. It's quite large. Looking at the list of people involved.
Yeah, so it has they interview a bunch of iOS devs, like indie devs, and also devs that are working for companies and all that. So it's basically just a story and the impact that the iPhone and all the app ecosystem has on these people's lives. It's very, very interesting. I watched the first cut, but 2 summers ago. It was really good, and I can't wait to watch this latest version. I didn't have time to see it. I'm probably gonna watch it this weekend.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at it too because you've been talking to me about this for a long time, and I've seen trailers here and there, and just looking at the list of people that they're interviewed, it's quite impressive. It's not just like 4 or 5 people. You have like maybe what is that, like maybe 40 people. So, and you have big names in there also. So it's pretty impressive. So looking forward to this documentary finally. And I even see that there's Steve Jobs in there. So I'm guessing did they really interview him like before he passed away, or is it just like stock footage?
It's clips from iOS keynotes, I guess, or not iOS, but just keynotes in general. I think.
Cool. Yeah. So links will be in the show notes if you want to view it. It's streaming right now on Vimeo. You can purchase it over there also.
They're saying that it's going to be available on iTunes maybe next year.
Okay, cool. All right, so since a couple of weeks ago, I got a MacBook Pro with a Touch Bar 2017. So I figured out that let me try that Touch Bar thing and see how can I make it work better. As you might know, by default, you have the system controls that are collapsed to the right. So you have brightness controls, volume control. That's all nice, but it's not enough for me. I needed something else. So one thing that I realized that I was missing, especially because I am often communicating with colleagues over Zoom, which is a software that is similar to Skype, and if you want to get the best sound when somebody else is talking, you just mute your line so that you have the maximum amount of bandwidth for hearing other people speak. So one thing I was missing is a mute button, because right now I have the volume control and the speaker mute, but not the microphone mute. So I added this little button using an app called Mute Me. So it's very simple. It's just a little button you had there, and you press it, it becomes red, and it can mute your software. So that's quite great. The other thing that people were complaining about is that the Touch Bar has no physical or has no kind of feedback. When you press a button, unless you're looking at it, and you cannot exactly see what's happening with the buttons you press, because there's no retroactions, you don't have any physical presses, and you don't have any feeling. So somebody quite smart basically made the haptic touch bar. So this is a little accessibility feature you can add, which basically adds a little haptic feedback from the trackpad when you press any button on the touch bar. So let's say I'm on my computer and I in a terminal and I'm in VI and I want to hit escape to right quit my file. I use my pinky to hit escape. But now there's no physical feeling for escape, so I don't know if I really hit it unless I look either at my terminal command or at my touch bar. So what this thing is, if you have your palms on your laptop, you basically feel when your pinky hits escape, you feel a little vibration as if you were clicking with your trackpad. So it's not a fix, it's a hack basically, but it works very well. Seriously, it's been a lifesaver for me, because always having to look at my keyboard and hit that little escape to be sure that I hit it only once and not twice, and it was a pain. But this thing really helps a lot. So this is Haptic Touch Bar. It's made by Bobsoft, and you can buy it for $5. You have a trial. I think it's, am I right? I think it's a 30 days trial. Yeah, most probably. So I don't have the numbers here, but you have a free trial if you want to try it first. So it works very well. It doesn't take up any space on your touch bar. It's just you install this, you go into the accessibility of macOS, and you enable this little program there. And from now on, when you hit the touch bar, it vibrates your trackpad. So that's great. And one last thing that I installed a while back, it was on Product Hunt that I found this. It's called Unsplash Wallpaper by who did this? Jeez, I think it's Unsplash directly. So the team behind Unsplash, which is a Montreal company who makes lots of nice stock photos available for you. They basically have an app where you can cycle through.
They're always for free.
Yeah, they're always for free, and their app is free too, where you can cycle with different backgrounds on your Mac laptop or external displays. So you always get high resolution, optimized images for your backgrounds. But when I was looking for that link, I found that the guy who did it basically redirects now to another app called Irvue, IRVUE, basically, which is available in the Mac App Store, which is also still getting features from Unsplash. So the source is the same, but you have a ton more features. You can select channels. So if you want like only like I don't know, like green photography, like your plants and leaves and stuff, you can select that. You can select textures also. So it's quite impressive. There's a lot more features than original. So if you want a very, very, very minimal thing, I don't know if you can still download it. I wasn't able to find the link, but I still put the link in the show note for the new one. So this new one is still free, but you have like crazy amount of feature. It's not the same thing. What I have is just like click to refresh, and when you like one, you hit set as wallpaper. But this one is now a lot more features. All right, that's it for RGBA number 73. You can find the show notes at rgba.fm/73. You can find us on Twitter at _RGBAfm, and you can find us personally on Twitter. I'm Valliere, VALLIERES.
And I'm Tyler Menard, TYLERMENARD.
Have a nice week.
Have a nice week.